The morning my boss fired me, she was wearing my husband's cologne. I noticed it the second I walked into her office. That specific scent, cedar, amber, and something warm underneath it. The kind that cost $180 a bottle, and the kind I had been buying Liam for 6 years. It hit me before anything else did, before the words, before the HR folder sitting on the corner of her desk with my name printed on the tab, before the look on her face that was trying very hard to be professional but kept slipping into something else. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Natalie Diana Calloway said, gesturing toward the chair across from her. "Sit down." I sat. I had been working at Calloway Capital Group for 9 years. 9 years of being the first one in and the last one out. 9 years of closing deals that built Diana's reputation while she got her name on the building directory. 9 years of believing that loyalty meant something in this business. "We're restructuring the investment division," Diana said. "Your position is being eliminated." She slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a termination letter, an NDA, and a severance offer. 3 months' salary in exchange for my silence and my signature. 3 months. For 9 years. Effective when I asked. Today. I looked at her for a long moment. At the expensive watch on her wrist, the one I recognized because Liam had helped pick it out at a boutique in the Gold Coast last Christmas. At the faint trace of his cologne still hanging in the air between us. At the practiced blankness of her expression. "Okay," I said. I signed the folder, stood up, and walked out of an office I had spent nearly a decade helping build without saying another word. My name is Natalie Briggs. I am 41 years old, and for most of my adult life, I thought I understood how the world worked. You worked hard. You stayed loyal. You built something with your hands, your time, your patience, and your exhaustion. Eventually, I believed all of that was supposed to add up to a life worth living. I grew up in Rockford, Illinois. My dad, Gordon Briggs, worked 30 years at a machine parts factory. My mom, Patricia, worked the early shift at a hospital cafeteria until her knees gave out. We were not poor. We just never had anything extra. I was the first person in my family to graduate college, earning a business degree from the University of Illinois while working nights at a call center to pay for it. I moved to Chicago at 23 with $2,000 and a determination that felt like armor back then. That was where I met Diana Calloway. She was 35 already, running a mid-sized investment consulting firm on the 22nd floor of a building on North Wacker Drive. Smart, magnetic, intimidating in a polished way. The kind of woman who made you feel important just by paying attention to you. She hired me as a junior analyst. Within 4 years, I was running her institutional accounts division. Within 7, I was bringing in clients whose names you would recognize from the business pages. And somewhere along the way, I introduced her to my husband. Liam and I had met in Lincoln Park at a fundraiser for a children's literacy program he helped organize. He worked in nonprofit administration, the kind of man who remembered every volunteer's name, who could make a room soften just by laughing at himself first. He had dark hair, patient eyes, and a way of making ordinary moments feel steadier than they were. We got married in 2017 in Galena, about 3 hours west of Chicago. Our daughter Vivian came 2 years later. Our son Cooper came 18 months after that. By the time I walked into Diana's office that October morning, Vivian was 4 and Cooper was 2. And I believed, genuinely believed, that my life was moving in one direction. I had no idea it had already been rerouted. The first thing I did after leaving Calloway Capital was call Liam. He did not answer. I called twice more on my walk to the parking garage. Nothing. I sent a text. "Just got fired. On my way home. We need to talk." He read it. I could see the 2 check marks turn blue. He did not respond. I drove home to our house in Wilmette, a quiet suburb north of Chicago with good schools, wide sidewalks, and neighbors who waved from their driveways. We had bought it 4 years earlier, a 4-bedroom colonial on a tree-lined street that felt like physical proof that everything I had worked for had actually added up to something. Liam's car was in the driveway. I went inside. The house was quiet. The kids' shoes were piled by the front door the way they always were. Someone had left a juice cup on the kitchen counter with a ring of apple juice around the base. Liam was sitting at the kitchen table with his phone face down in front of him. He was wearing the kind of expression I had seen before, controlled, prepared, like he had been rehearsing. "Natalie," he said, "I was going to tell you this weekend." "Tell me what?" He did not look away. That was one thing about Liam. He had never been a coward about the hard things. Even this he delivered straight. "I've been seeing Diana for 8 months," he said. "I'm in love with her. I want a divorce." 8 months. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen and did the math without meaning to. 8 months earlier was February. February was when Liam had started going to a men's wellness retreat 1 weekend a month. February was when Diana had started scheduling our one-on-one meetings later in the day, always ending them early with some vague excuse about a dinner commitment. February was when I had noticed Liam laughing differently at dinner parties, louder and freer, like he was performing for someone. I had filed it under stress, under exhaustion, under the ordinary friction of a busy life with 2 small children and demanding careers. "The kids I managed. I want primary custody," he said. "You can see them every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. Diana and I are planning to—" "Don't," I said. "Do not say her name to me right now." He stopped saying her name, but he did not stop. He laid everything out like a business plan. The custody arrangement, the division of assets, the fact that he had already spoken to a lawyer. He was thorough. He had 8 months to prepare. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, listening to the sound of the house I was already losing. The divorce moved fast. Liam had a powerful attorney and the considerable resources of Diana Calloway standing behind him. My attorney was competent but outmatched. The judge awarded Liam primary residence in the Wilmette house, primary physical custody of Vivian and Cooper, and child support at a level that consumed 60% of what I would make if I found comparable work. And finding comparable work was going to be its own battle, because I had signed the NDA, and because Diana had quietly let it be known in our professional circle that I had been let go for performance issues. Within 90 days of that October morning, I had no job, no home, and no daily access to my children. My friend Tyler Marsh ran a small IT consulting firm in Evanston, and he let me sleep on his couch for 3 weeks. Tyler was a good man. He did not ask too many questions. Eventually, I found a room in a shared house in Rogers Park on the north side of Chicago. 4 people in their late 20s, a bathroom with questionable grout, and a neighborhood that smelled like lakefront wind and Jamaican takeout. 41 years old, paying $650 a month for a room the size of a generous parking space. The texts from Liam during that period were businesslike and brief, schedule confirmations, updates on the kids' doctor appointments. Once, entirely unprompted, he wrote, "Diana and I are taking Vivian and Cooper to Florida next month, just so you know." I read that one standing in the Rogers Park kitchen holding a mug of cold coffee, and I did not answer for 2 days. Then one night in January, 4 months after everything fell apart, I got a text from a number I did not recognize. Just 9 words. "You'll die broke and lonely. You deserve this, Natalie." I sat with that message for a long time. I did not know for certain who sent it. I had my suspicions. But what I remember most about that moment is what happened after the anger passed. And eventually it did pass. What was left underneath was something quieter and more dangerous. A kind of numbness. The feeling of a woman who had run out of things to lose. That feeling, I would later understand, is exactly when life decides to surprise you. Raymond Briggs was my father's younger brother, 17 years younger, which made him only 8 years older than me. He was the kind of uncle who showed up twice a year, with a tan, stories that sounded slightly too good to be true, and a way of looking at you like he was reading something just beneath the surface. He had left Rockford at 18 and gone west. California, Nevada, Texas, Colorado. Nothing ever fully settled. Real estate, energy consulting, things he stayed vague about whenever anyone asked. He never married. He had no children. He sent birthday cards with $50 folded inside until I was well into my 30s, then switched to calling. He died in November of the year before my marriage fell apart. A heart attack in his rented house in Scottsdale, Arizona. He was 55. His lawyer told my father he had left a modest estate, some personal belongings, a used pickup truck, and a storage unit in Cicero, Illinois, that he had been renting for 11 years. At the time, I was in the middle of the worst stretch of my life, and I forgot about it. Then, in February, the same month I got that anonymous text, my father called. "Natalie, you remember that storage unit of Raymond's? I remember you mentioning it. I need you to go out there and clear it. The facility's been sending notices. They say if nobody pays the outstanding balance by the end of the month, they're going to auction off the contents." "Dad," I said, "I'm barely keeping my head above water right now." "I know, sweetheart." There was a long pause. My father was not a man who used many words, but he knew how to make the ones he used count. "But Raymond always had a soft spot for you. Of all the family, you were the one he asked about. I think he'd want you to be the one to go." The Midwest Storage Solutions facility on South Laramie Avenue in Cicero was the kind of place that looks exactly like what it is. A long row of corrugated metal doors under fluorescent lighting, the smell of dust and old cardboard, and a security gate that required a code Raymond had apparently given my father years ago. My father had written it on a Post-it note he found in his desk drawer. Unit 114. I drove out there on a Thursday morning in late February. It was one of those gray Chicago area winter days when the sky is the same color as the parking lot. I had nowhere particular to be. I had $72 in my checking account. I had a scheduled call with my divorce attorney that afternoon about why my visitation with Vivian and Cooper needed to be adjusted because of a scheduling conflict on Liam's end. I was not in a great place. The lock on Unit 114 was a heavy combination padlock, and the code my father had given me Raymond's birthday backward, March 4th, 1968. So 8691403 did not work on the first 3 tries. I stood there in the cold with my fingers going numb, feeling vaguely ridiculous. On the 4th try, it clicked open. I lifted the metal door. The unit was about 10 feet wide by 15 feet deep. Shelving units along both walls held labeled plastic bins, tax records, camping gear, tools, automotive supplies. A rolled-up Turkish rug leaned in one corner. A few cardboard boxes were stacked in the middle, marked in Raymond's handwriting with categories like books and miscellaneous kitchen. At first glance, it was unremarkable. The accumulated stuff of a man who moved around a lot and kept things he was not sure he would need. But on the back wall, sitting on a lower shelf between a bin of extension cords and a folded winter jacket, was a hard-sided briefcase. Black aluminum framed, the kind with a combination lock built into each latch. Taped to the top, in Raymond's handwriting, was a single piece of paper with a name on it. Natalie. Not my father's name. Not a general label. Mine. My name. I stood there looking at it for a long time. The cold from the concrete floor came up through my shoes. My breath made small clouds in the air. Then I reached for it. The combination for the briefcase latches was the same as the unit lock. Raymond's birthday backward. They clicked open on the first try this time. Inside was a padded interior divided into 2 sections. On the left side was money, stacks of it. $100 bills wrapped in paper currency bands from a Nevada bank, each band labeled $10,000. I counted 6 stacks without picking them up. $60,000. On the right side was a manila envelope, a folded piece of paper, and a round-trip plane ticket, the kind you print from a home printer. The destination was Scottsdale, Arizona. The departure date was 3 days from now. I unfolded the piece of paper first. The handwriting was Raymond's, slightly right-leaning, economical, the penmanship of a man who wrote quickly and did not circle his eyes. Natalie, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I set this up in case something happened to me before I got a chance to explain things in person. I should have told you years ago. I was waiting for the right moment, and I ran out of time the way people do. The $60,000 is travel money, living money, a buffer while you figure out the next step. Don't overthink it, just use it. The real story is in Scottsdale. The address is in the envelope. When you get there, introduce yourself to the woman named Sandra Cole. She's been expecting you, in a way, for about 20 years. She'll explain what I couldn't. Everything I built for a reason. You'll understand when you see it. You were always the one in the family who was going to do something real, Natalie. I knew it when you were 12 years old and you were the only one who asked me a question I couldn't answer. I didn't forget that. Take the flight. Go to the address. Listen to what Sandra tells you. Raymond. I sat down on the floor of the storage unit with the letter in my hand and read it twice more. Around me, the fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere deeper in the facility, a metal door rattled closed. $60,000 a plane ticket and an address in Scottsdale. My uncle, who had died 14 months earlier, had left me a message in a briefcase in a storage unit in Cicero, Illinois. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and stared at the $72.18 in my checking account. Then I looked at the 6 stacks of hundreds. Then I picked up the plane ticket. I know what that sounds like. It could have been money from something I did not want to know about. It could have been a trap. It could have been Raymond's idea of a strange joke. I thought all of those things. I sat on that freezing floor for 45 minutes. By the time I stood up, my legs had gone numb. But here's what I kept coming back to. Raymond had been the one person in my family who seemed to see me clearly. Not the version my parents were proud of, not the version Diana Calloway had used for 9 years. Something closer to the truth of who I actually was. And he had waited, in whatever form a dead man can wait, for the moment when I had nothing left to lose. I thought about Vivian and Cooper. Cooper grabbing my collar with both hands when I tried to put him down. Vivian asking why Mommy did not live in her house anymore, and then slowly stopping because she had figured out the question made everyone sad. I took the money, the letter, and the ticket. I flew to Scottsdale 3 days later. The address in the envelope led me to a residential neighborhood in North Scottsdale, near the McCormick Ranch area. Wide streets, low desert landscaping, houses behind stucco walls with terracotta roof lines. Not flashy in a Vegas way, the kind of wealthy that does not need to announce itself. The house at the specific address was substantial. A gated property with a paved circular driveway, olive trees along the perimeter wall, and the particular silence of a place with serious square footage. I rang the intercom at the gate. "Who is it?" a woman's voice asked, measured, alert. "My name is Natalie Briggs," I said. "I'm Raymond Briggs's niece. I found a letter he left me with this address." A pause. A long one. "How long ago did you find the letter?" 3 days. I came as soon as I could. Another pause. "Come to the front door." The gate buzzed open. Sandra Cole was 63 years old, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back from a face that had clearly been striking in youth and had settled into something more interesting with age. Composed. Watchful. The face of someone who had made difficult decisions and lived with them. She wore a linen shirt and reading glasses pushed up on her head, and she looked at me the way my uncle's letter had warned me she might. Like she had been expecting me, but not quite like this. "You look like him," she said, "around the eyes." People said that. She led me through a house full of art. Serious art. Not decorative pieces, but paintings and sculptures that clearly came from somewhere and meant something. We sat in a room that opened to a courtyard with a fountain in it, and the particular quality of light Scottsdale has in the afternoon, gold and slightly theatrical. She poured coffee without asking if I wanted it, and sat across from me.
Raymond told me if anything happened to him, he would get a message to you, eventually, she said. He said you would find the unit. He was right about most things.
What was Raymond to you? I asked. Business partner, she said, for 23 years. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. And a long time ago, before any of the business, he was the first person who ever believed I could build something serious. What Sandra Cole told me over the next 3 hours rearranged my understanding of my uncle's life completely. Raymond had left Rockford at 18, not because he was running from something, as the family had always half assumed, but because he was running toward something specific. He had met Sandra in Las Vegas in 1993 when she was a 27-year-old commercial property analyst, and he was a 25-year-old kid with no formal credentials and an extraordinary instinct for undervalued land. Together, over 2 decades, they had built a private real estate holding company called Clearwater Land Partners. Not flashy, not public, not the kind of name that showed up in business magazines. The kind of company that bought large tracts of land in the path of development 10 years before the development arrived, held them patiently, and sold at the right moment. They had done this repeatedly, in Nevada, in Arizona, in parts of Colorado and New Mexico that nobody was paying attention to until suddenly they were. Raymond never wanted recognition, Sandra said. He specifically did not want anyone in his family to know the scale of it. He said rich relatives ruin families. He had seen it. What is the scale of it? I asked. She set down her coffee mug. Clearwater Land Partners' current portfolio, after the sale of the Maricopa County holdings last year, has a net asset value of approximately $112 million. I heard the number. I understood each word individually. Together, they did not immediately compute. Raymond's ownership stake was 43%, Sandra continued. He revised his will 18 months before he died. The entirety of his stake passes to you, Natalie. We have been in a legal holding pattern waiting for you to appear because Raymond's instructions specified that the beneficiary had to come here in person after finding the letter before any transfer could be initiated. I sat in that sunlit room in Scottsdale with a fountain making soft noise in the courtyard and tried to understand that my uncle the man, who sent $50 birthday cards and showed up twice a year with a tan and vague stories, had been quietly building a fortune for 2 decades and had, without telling anyone, decided to leave it to me. Why me? I asked. He had other family. Sandra looked at me for a moment. He said you were the only one who would know what to do with it, not spend it, build with it. He said the rest of the family would be comfortable and then ruined in about 4 years. She paused. He also said you were going to need it. I did not tell anyone immediately. Not Tyler, not my parents, not Liam. I flew back to Chicago, sat in my Rogers Park bedroom, and spent 3 days thinking. The first thing I understood was that money does not automatically fix what is broken. I had nearly $50 million coming to me, and my children were still sleeping in a house I did not live in, being taken to Florida by the woman who had dismantled my marriage. The second thing I understood was that what I did next would define a very long stretch of my life. I had options that ranged from petty to catastrophic. I am human. I had been humiliated in ways that went deep. But I kept coming back to Vivian grabbing my collar, to Cooper's face, to the fact that everything I did next had to have them as the fixed point. The first call I made was to a family law attorney in Chicago, not the one I had used during the divorce, a different firm, one of the top practices in the city, the kind I had heard of but could never previously afford. The attorney was a woman named Jennifer Hartwell,
and she had a reputation for being absolutely methodical and slightly frightening. I told her my situation, all of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The custody arrangement. Was it agreed upon in mediation or ordered by a judge?" "Agreed. Technically," I said, "but agreed under circumstances where my financial position made fighting for more very difficult." "Circumstances have changed." "Yes. A material change in circumstances is grounds for custody modification in Illinois," she said. "If you can demonstrate stable housing, financial stability, and a genuine ability to provide a primary residence for your children, a motion to modify is reasonable." I drove to Wilmette the following Saturday for my regular visit with Vivian and Cooper. Cooper had gotten a haircut that made him look suddenly heartbreakingly older. Vivian had learned a knock-knock joke at preschool and told it to me 4 times in a row with the same delighted expectation each time. I held both of them for a long time before I left. Within 60 days, I had purchased a 4-bedroom house in Evanston, Illinois, 3 miles from the Wilmette house, in the same school district, close enough that the kids' routines would not have to change significantly. I paid for it directly. No mortgage, no contingencies. Tyler helped me furnish it over a weekend. He kept looking around the rooms with an expression he was trying very hard to keep neutral. "Raymond," I said, because I had told him the broad strokes by then. "Raymond," he repeated. Then he stared at me and said, "Natalie, your uncle was secretly rich for 20 years and did not tell anyone. He sent $50 birthday cards." Tyler sat down on the floor of the empty living room and laughed until his eyes watered. "I will not tell you the custody modification process was easy. There were 3 separate hearings and a guardian ad litem evaluation. Liam argued the modification was financially motivated, that I was using a sudden windfall to rewrite an arrangement that had been working. Jennifer Hartwell was methodical and slightly frightening. She presented a specific picture, a mother who had never missed a scheduled visit, even when her own circumstances were precarious, and who now had both the stability and the genuine desire to be a full daily presence in her children's lives. The evaluator recommended shared physical custody, alternating weeks. The judge agreed. The morning I brought Vivian and Cooper to the Evanston house for the first time, their rooms were already set up. Vivian's had the purple lamp she had specifically asked for. Cooper's had the train track that took up most of his floor. Vivian walked through the front door, looked around carefully, and then turned to me. "Mommy," she said, "is this your house?" "Our house," I said, "for when you're with me." She nodded, processing this. Then she asked, "Does it have a backyard?" "It has a big backyard." She turned around and walked toward the kitchen to find the back door with the absolute purposeful certainty of a 4-year-old who had decided this was acceptable. I stood in my front hallway and cried. I am not going to pretend I did not. The question people always ask is what I did about Diana. Less than you might expect. Structuring Raymond's estate transfer required making the company holdings and my ownership a matter of legal record. Financial disclosures. Documentation. The kind of paperwork trail that reaches people who pay attention in small professional worlds. Word traveled through Chicago's investment community. I did not spread it. I built something instead. Briggs Capital Ventures, offices on North Michigan Avenue. Same strategy Raymond had mastered. Undervalued land in the path of long horizon development. Sandra Cole joined as senior advisor. Tyler ran operations. Within 18 months, we had 3 significant land positions in the Phoenix area, a Texas Hill Country acquisition north of Austin, and a mixed-use development on Chicago's south side in the Rogers Park adjacent neighborhood where I had rented that $650 bedroom. That development created 80 construction jobs and restored a commercial block that had been vacant for a decade. I thought about Raymond often during that period. Diana Calloway's firm experienced what the business press called significant client attrition over the following 2 years. The last I heard, Calloway Capital Group had been absorbed in what insiders understood as a distressed sale. Liam and I co-parent. Functional. not friends. But Vivian and Cooper move between our houses with the adaptability of children who know they are loved in both places, and that is the outcome that matters. Last spring, Vivian turned 7. We had her birthday party in my Evanston backyard, the one with the big lawn she had approved on her first visit. It was a Saturday afternoon in May, with paper lanterns strung between the trees, a cake with 7 candles, and her school friends running through the sprinklers in a way that made the whole yard look like a movie about exactly this kind of thing. I stood at the edge of the yard, watching all of it. Tyler was next to me with a beer, watching too. "Your uncle knew," he said. "He knew something I said. He knew you'd be okay." I thought about Raymond. The tan, the vague stories, the 2 visits a year, the $50 cards, the 23 years of quiet, patient building in Nevada and Arizona and Colorado, all of it assembling into a thing he would never use himself. I thought about the briefcase with my name taped to it, about the $60,000 he had called travel money, like a man setting out a bowl of soup before a journey. I thought about my father's voice on the phone that February. "Raymond always had a soft spot for you. Of all the family, you were the one he asked about." Raymond had seen something in me that I could not see in myself from inside the life I had been living. He had waited for the moment when I would be stripped of everything that was obscuring it. And then, he had left me exactly what I needed. Not to be comfortable. To build. "He knew," I said. Vivian ran across the yard toward me with wet feet and a piece of cake she was holding out at an angle that suggested it was not going to survive the journey.
"Mommy, there's still some left," she said. "You have to eat some before it's all gone." I caught her when she reached me, one arm under her, the cake miraculously intact. "How much is left?" I asked. "Some," she said, which is the accurate and honest answer of a 7-year-old who has had more than her share. I ate the cake. The briefcase is in my home office now, on a shelf where I can see it when I am working. The letter is inside it, along with the combination lock code my father gave me on a Post-it note, and the boarding pass stub from the Scottsdale flight. Sometimes I think about what my uncle must have understood about life that I am still learning. That the things we are most sure of are often the things that are about to change. That loss, when it comes, can be a clearing rather than only a destruction. That sometimes the people who love us most do so from a distance we do not fully appreciate until they are gone. Raymond Briggs never got rich in the way people imagine when they hear that number. He got rich the way anyone gets anywhere meaningful. Slowly, patiently, without anyone watching. Building something one piece at a time with a fixed point in mind. The fixed point was me. I did not know it, but he did. And when everything I had built on other people's foundations collapsed beneath me, Raymond's foundation was already waiting. Not as revenge, not as rescue. As proof that the life I thought I had lost was never the only life I was capable of building.